Udta Punjab's depiction of drug abuse in Punjab isn't far off the mark. The state has consistently topped the charts in drug-related crimes. In 2013, it had the highest number of cases registered under the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1985, 14,654 out of 34,668, a considerable 42.2%. And in 2014, Punjab reported the highest number of convicts, 3,972 out of a national total of 8,923. I am Neha Singhal, a Senior Resident Fellow at the Vidhi Centre for Legal Policy. From the RTI responses we received, it seems that most prisoners are serving time under the NDPS Act in Punjab. Now, how did this happen? Let's study the NDPS Act. The NDPS Act is the consolidated law on drugs in India. It was enacted in 1985 in response to growing international pressure. At the time of its drafting, the purpose of the law was to deter traffickers with harsh penalties. As time passed, Parliament realized that addiction was an illness that needed a cure. Today, after the 2001 amendment, the Act makes a clear distinction between individual consumers and traffickers. Addicts can be diverted to rehabilitation to avail the cure they desperately need. Let's now look at some of the key features of the law. The NDPS Act prohibits cultivation, production, possession, sale, purchase, trade, use, and consumption of narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. The intent behind possessing drugs is immaterial to the law. Thus, a peddler selling 5 grams of heroin to a teenager attracts the same punishment as someone possessing 5 grams for personal use. This, as we shall see, wreaks havoc on the ground. While the law recognizes that addiction to drugs is an illness and needs cure, the anomaly is that it continues to criminalize drug use. Drug use can be criminalized with imprisonment for up to 1 year or fine or both. Now, how does the law decide to do this? A schedule attached to the Act determines the small, intermediate, and commercial quantities for drugs like cocaine, heroin, cannabis, etc. Possession of small quantities, as I just mentioned, is punishable by up to a year of imprisonment. Possession of commercial quantity of any drug, irrespective of the reason, carries a minimum punishment of 10 years imprisonment and 1 lakh rupees in fine. For certain crimes, an accused can be kept in judicial custody for up to 1 year. For this, the prosecutor needs to convince the court that he or she needs to be kept in custody longer. Predictably, this involves commercial quantities of drugs. As I have mentioned, the Act also allows for the diversion of addicts into de-addiction. Sections 39 and 64A allow for probation and immunity from prosecution to addicts volunteering for treatment. Section 39 empowers the court to release any addict convicted for possession of small quantities of drugs for treatment at a de-addiction center established or recognized by the government. This section provides the court with an alternative to imprisonment by diverting an addict to a de-addiction center. Section 64A allows an addict charged with possessing a small quantity of drug to seek immunity from prosecution by volunteering to undergo treatment at a de-addiction center maintained or recognized by the government. But interestingly, these provisions have never been used in Punjab. We interviewed doctors, lawyers, judges, but nobody seemed to have a clue that these provisions even existed in the law. From RTI responses, we gather that not a single person has ever been sent to de-addiction centers by the court in Punjab. At the other end of the spectrum are people convicted for the possession of commercial quantities of narcotics and psychotropic substances. As we have seen previously, the law itself provides a mandatory minimum punishment of 10 years, leaving no room for judicial discretion. Thus, regardless of age, health, or any other mitigating circumstances of the people arrested, judges have no option but to sentence them to 10 years rigorous imprisonment once they are found guilty. This matter is further exacerbated by a notification issued by the Ministry of Finance in 2009, which provides that to determine the quantity of drugs seized, the entire mixture of the substance has to be considered and not just its pure drug content. This has resulted in a disproportionate number of people being convicted for 10 years imprisonment for carrying pharmaceutical drugs. There is a case in Barnala where a woman was carrying 5 liters of liquid which contained codeine. On calculation, the pure content of codeine came to 5 grams, which is barely above small quantity, and prior to the 2009 notification would have gotten away with a mere fine. In Punjab, across all districts, a majority of people are arrested and brought to court for the possession of an intermediate quantity of drugs. These quantities are usually only marginally higher than the prescribed small quantities. For example, the small quantity of heroin is below 5 grams and commercial quantity is above 250 grams. Cases of heroin coming to the courts usually are in the range of 5 to 15 grams. By the admission of some of the judges themselves, the people being arrested for possession of an intermediate quantity of drugs are, more often than not, mere users. These people are usually convicted to a time they have already undergone as under trials, which could even be 5 days or a week. This serves neither the purpose of deterrence nor rehabilitation. Under the NDPS Act, the mere possession of any narcotic or psychotropic substance is sufficient to infer guilt. Falling in the category of strict liability offences, in Punjab, this has resulted in stock charge sheets and a uniform police narrative. This means that police is usually on patrolling duty looking for suspicious elements. They find a person who looks nervous seeing the police party and turns away. The police on suspicion catches them, finds a polythene bag. In the polythene bag, the police finds poppy husk, heroin, smack, pills, tablets. There is no independent witness, and this alone leads the person to jail. In conclusion, the manner in which the NDPS Act is enforced in Punjab is ill-suited to the state for 2 reasons. Firstly, the law focuses mainly on deterrence and the prevention of trafficking. The problem in Punjab, however, is primarily that of addiction. Drug use is rampant across Punjab, with the abuse of opium, poppy husk, heroin, and pharmaceutical drugs being the most common. To truly alleviate the problem of the people, the addiction and rehabilitation needs to be addressed urgently. The Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment sanctioned 28 new de-addiction centers in 2015. It is now upon the state to operationalize them and motivate people towards de-addiction. The Act, with its mandatory minimum punishments and strict liability offences, creates ample scope for abuse. This scope has been well utilized by the Punjab state machinery. Over 1/3 of all prisoners in Punjab have been convicted under the NDPS Act. It is essential that the system is cleaned up before the state buckles under the pressures created by this Act. Thank you.